these dealerships actually delivering what they promised the customer?
It is a nutshell of what has been promised.
Where is the gap? Why was that never delivered?
Take it step by step and just check mark. It slipped in the whole ecosystem, how it was managed.
Why do customers come and buy the car once and never come back again?
They are so focused about the performance, not the effectiveness.
So in reality, it's actually misleading KPIs.
A market share is a fake number.
This also creates a burnout for the service teams, and I'm talking about technicians, engineers, service.
There is a big responsibility on leadership.
Sharif,
Hi Shadi, how are you?
all good. Now, most dealerships think actually that their main core business is selling cars. However, what I think is that service excellence, and this is the title of the episode today, is about really the service that these dealerships provide. Now, to recap, that really just means that they are providing the service. However, it's in the disguise of the showrooms. Am I right or wrong?
Well, frankly speaking, if we're talking about the automotive field and the perceptions that comes with, what dealerships offer in reality versus the, let's say, the back scenes of what they are actually offering. So what all people know, I'm talking about the individuals or the public, the market in general, what they do perceive about dealerships is basically they get to introduce cars, spare parts, and service centers, and what is being claimed as, a full experience. So the question here is, are they delivering all of them, or they're partially delivering and the rest is like, the unforeseen myth to the rest of the market?
You know that this was actually my next question. Are these dealerships actually delivering what they promised the customer they will do? Because they normally promise the customer the world, like you mentioned. So are they actually doing that, or how does this work?
Well, let's just, take it 2 steps back, okay? Historically, the way people get to perceive, or the dealerships were actually, marketing themselves and trying to make sure that the public would actually understand what a dealership is. In 1980s, this was something very new to the, all the, let's say, the majority of the Middle East markets. And the challenge here was basically, what is a dealership? What are they providing? And suddenly they start seeing, a couple of showrooms here and there. And after that, okay, now, yeah, we can actually sell spare parts. Then later on services. Then it, let's say when the competition started to increase in the markets, everybody started realizing from the automakers, no, we have to stretch the bar of competition to the experience itself, which includes the whole cycle during, the possession of each car, each individual for his car. But the question here is, what was the promise and was it delivered or not? In my opinion, across the last, I would say 25 years to 30 years, the promise was not actually delivered. It is a nutshell of what has been promised. The companies have promised let's say, a luxury drive, a smooth, experience for the family, for the individuals, for the travel, for the daily use, or whatever. The product has been delivered, but the services were not. And there are many reasons behind that.
That brings me to the next very important question. Where did that slip? Where is the gap? Why was that never delivered? Because according to what you're saying, there is a gap, and there was a promise that wasn't delivered of service itself, service level, which, and then because that will bring you to your own experience. You come from a service, automotive, after sales service background, then into consultancy, which is the service excellence title, and then into even as an operations director for one of the leading rent-a-car operations in KSA or Saudi Arabia. Now, again, to recap, where did that slip?
Let's take it step by step and just check mark. Did the dealerships provide, high quality cars to the market? Yes. Did they take care of the showrooms, the experience within the showroom? Yes. Did they digitalize the whole process of the sales, offering, negotiation, or whatever, quoting? Yes. Did they do workshops? Yes. Have they scattered them everywhere to make them, available for everyone to increase the reach and penetration of the markets? Yes. Did they get spare parts? Yes. So where did this slip? It slipped in the whole ecosystem, how it was managed, because it is so different when you provide the solution, but without the integration of all of them and looking from the bird eye, looking at the market from, a helicopter view to understand what's happening. The KPIs which has been used, they are still so weak. They are actually not reflecting reality. And since the leaderships, they are not actually looking at having the full view, they were like, where did we slip? Which basically is your main question. Was it basically we failed to deliver the promise in the after sales services? Should we blame the sales? Should we blame the marketing? Should we blame the finance? Should we blame, the competition?
HR or talent acquisition?
Or maybe, look, everyone starts pointing finger within the room. But if you just step two steps back and you look at the whole picture, and this is what actually consulting helped me, and I'm not going to actually go through this in detail, but it helped me to see the whole value stream, the whole supply chain, how it works. So you can see in a nutshell, there is technology, there is cars, there is spare parts, there is after sales, there is manpower. What is wrong? So it starts slipping with how they integrate all the services together. They're not in harmony. They're all in silos. They're internally competing against each other. The spare parts manager is like, yeah, I'm the one who's getting the highest profitability and the highest revenue. Then the sales guy, no, I am the one who's building the brand in the country. Then the other guy in the after sales or the service is like, the retention is mine. It's not all of you guys. In the finance, you know what? Managing the cash flow and managing the sources of funding was actually my idea. So the thing here is the organization becomes non-customer centric. Nobody is focusing, and everybody is like trying to please the CEOs or the leadership or the family business, owners, or the corporate level, their higher management. And this is where everything started collapsing. You had all the tools, but nothing was integrated. The harmony was not actually in place. And this is one of the main reasons, a lot of people, they keep on questioning, okay, should we change the team? Should we change the process? Should we change the KPIs? How can we do that? And that's the dilemma of all these after-sales services or the services in terms of dealership provided.
So it is the silos, basically, and the leadership.
Yes, to a very big extent, yes, it is. How you manage silos within the leadership empowerment and, focus.
But then going back again to the customer, because that's our main focus today. Why do customers come and buy the car once and never come back again?
That's a very nice question. Look, believe it or not, since I started my career, in the automotive, I had this kind of big question. In the planning phase, when you start, designing the capacity of the after-sales network for any company, and I had the opportunity to work in a company that holds, such great reputation in the automotive industry, and they were setting up the after-sales services in a country. So I had this kind of question, which is, why are we actually reflecting or targeting a very minimal UIO, and every year it gets to be reduced? So basically, the person who's planning, he is planning to have less customers across years. And I was like, I didn't get it. If I'm selling 100 cars, so the plan is I'm gonna target 50 in the first year. The second year, the retention would drop to 30. Then the third year would be like 20, and fourth year, he's out. So you're pre-planning not to focus on whatever you're selling. You're actually not targeting the full potential since the start. And then you end up with blaming the frontliners. It starts with the leadership, how they plan, how they are, let's say, greedy enough to look at the market.
But then this brings us to a very important question. What do actually leaders think versus reality into their own actions? Because that is the most important part.
Okay.
And since you've worked in consultancy, that means you have been interacting with leaders.
Yes.
So you've been sitting in boardrooms, having those kind of tough discussions.
Yes.
So you've seen the difference between the planning and between the execution.
Well, the bias is the killer, because when you have leaders in the room, you have different types of leaders. You have the experienced one, and you have the scientific one, and you have the person who is down to earth. He's the one that states the facts, and he doesn't see the full picture. He just wants to explain that this is a problem, I want to fix it. And you would have the strategic guy, then you have the critique guy, and so on. This kind of, full house mix inside the room actually brings so much valuable information on the table, where you will see different dimensions, discussed inside the kitchen. And basically what happens is you will find people relying on their previous experience regardless of what's happening in the market and the amount of changes and the trends and the people who are coming, from the end of the corridor, which are basically the entrepreneurs trying to fish out the vacuum in the market to step in at any time. Then you have the guy who is like, he's so a big fan and obsessed of the best practices of other companies, and he wants to replicate everything as if one shoe fits all. Then you have somebody trying to impose that the facts that he can see, those are reality, I know the market, and so on. So it's a big fight, and if you want to think about it, wisely, you have to always rely on the data, the market intelligence. You have to rely on technology, and you have to be always updated what's happening in the market. It's not about the experience you have. You might have an experience of 40 years old, but at the end, market has changed. Customer taste has changed. And even the type of services that are introduced in the market and the competition has completely changed. So if you don't change your mindset, if you don't change your processes, you don't change the way you make decisions and how fast and reactive to respond to the customer requirements, then you're out.
But then that actually indicates something very important that to do with what you're saying. Reports, dashboards, KPIs, they are not the mainstream here or the main course where you should rely on going forward. There is always the market intelligence, your sense of market changes and how that develops, so that you can also develop along and be proactive.
Yes, well, relying 100% on reports is a big mistake.
And most of the time they are not accurate, if I'm not mistaken. And correct me if I'm wrong, of course.
Well, they always say garbage in, garbage out. So it depends who's collecting the information, how is he collecting the information, the sampling size, the timing, the relevance, everything. This has to be first, challenged before reading any reports. What's the source of the report? How did you collect the information? From where? When?
You know that this is one case that it was always debatable between me and one of my colleagues regarding the CRM data. And that's always a big debate, how accurate it is. And when I say CRM data, and I am talking about customer satisfaction, customer index, and all these things, I always look at it as like cash flow, for example, like in finance. You can make a company profitable and it's not. And it's the same thing with the customer index. You can make it look great. However, depending on what you're targeting to look at, then you can make yourself completely successful. However, that might not be the truth. Am I right?
Well, it depends on how they define success. Some people define success, the profits that you actually see in the income statements. Some others would say, no, we want to balance it with the liquidity in the company. Okay. And that's something else that you would see in a different report. Then others will say, no, I want the brand equity to increase by across time. Then the others like growth. Land grab, just go full speed, burn prices, and make sure that the company is growing. We're going to make sure that we will get the profits later. So it depends on the strategies they are having. But the thing here is, each sector or each industry has a way to, to manage the game rules. If you go outside those rules, you're going to be absolutely out of the market. And within the automotive, there are like almost two approaches for companies to scale. And as you said, internally, some companies, they focus on performance. And those companies who focus on performance, those are the ones like the MPS, the SLAs, the profitability, and all the financial statements, they look really good in shape. But the growth is not actually sustainable. It's like a 2-year cycle thing or 3-cycle thing, 3-year. And that's one of the reasons you find leadership of those companies every 3 years are being changed.
But then that takes us to the next question, because it's still relatable to the service excellence. Where is the blind spot in after sales?
Well, the blind spot in the after sales, they are so focused about the performance, not the effectiveness. And the effectiveness is, let's say, the pre-step before excellence. In other words, performance is more like, you're doing the things in a very efficient way and high quality. But the question here is the effectiveness. Are you doing the right things or not? So I might be I'm utilizing the setup that they actually gave me to run the show, the after sales services, or, the sales showrooms or whatever. And I'm doing what they have told me to do very well. And based on the KPIs that has been set to me, which is preset, okay, best practice, top class, KPIs, as they mentioned, the leaders. This is how you define success. It looks nice, but the question here is it effective or not? The market would tell you. Because if you're doing everything well, based on your KPIs, the leadership should be happy. But at the end, when they see the market share, it's not increasing.
So in reality, it's actually misleading KPIs. So, because that takes me to my next question. What are the things, and it's a very straightforward question, what are the things that dealerships think they are doing in a great way? However, because of the misleading KPIs, like you're mentioning, it's actually not being done correctly.
Yes. Well, dealerships think that they focus on market share in order to make sure that they are successfully, growing. But in reality, a market share is a fake number because it shows how much cars did you dump in the industry. But the question here is, what would be the number one selection of the customer that bought the car from the first timer? What will be the number one selection after he gets to sell this car? Probably will not be the same brand. And that KPI, nobody actually exposes. And marketing doesn't focus on that KPI because normally it doesn't actually, it will not be handled in let's say, a pleasant way. But in reality, if you check, in other industries like, mobile phones, Samsung, iPhone, they do such kind of KPIs. They always analyze the market and understand what would be your second selection if you sell, or let's say you want to change your iPhone. Would you prefer to go to another iPhone, or are you gonna go for most likely to go to a Samsung or an LG? And that's a very important KPI that the automotive has to embrace, because it shows you another dimension from the market that you're not looking today. As I told you from the beginning, at the beginning of the discussion, it was pre-planned that you're going to lose anyway. You sold 100 and you're planning that you're going to receive 50. Why? I was supposed to be, in contact with that customer the longest time possible. And I'm the one who wants to make sure that the customer actually, returns back to buy the same brand, a newer model with a different spec. But currently, you don't have such kind of KPIs. So today, the problem here is the automotive industry is looking at the level 1 of KPIs to manage businesses, not the level 2, not the higher level. So it's more of performance, pure performance-based KPIs.
Now, when you talk about performance, that takes me to the next question, because it is to do with the operations within the after sales department. And how quickly does the customer realize that there are bottlenecks, that kind of operation is under pressure?
Well, from the first visit, I would say first visit for the customer could be in some dealerships like the first 1,000 kilometer service, or maybe second service, and in very rare situations where they have a sudden breakdown that requires warranty coverage or something. So how does the customer actually realize that something is wrong? The customer doesn't realize that he went with the wrong dealership at the stage of, they call it the honeymoon. Buying a new car, you're smelling the new leather, seats.
Rust proofing.
Yes, everybody's like, you have a free tinting, you have a free whatever, you're gonna get this and this freebies, and everybody's like happy, saluting each other. They leave the showrooms. Sales guy is like, wow, he's the angel, come on. He just gave me something that I'm enjoying to drive. And you get stuck with the first, point of contact when you need a service. You call up the call center. I need to make a service. Okay. You're going to have an appointment. Okay. How long is that going to take? Oh, it's going to be maybe next week or the week after. Yeah, but what happens if it's urgent? You guys, for sure, when you sold the car, you have planned for a capacity, which is the same problem again in the planning. They don't have enough capacity to get the services done on time. So the first point is I have to wait. And this is the most annoying thing for any customer. So I paid the money, I got the car, and I'm so happy with it. But first experience with the dealership, I have to wait. Second point is, if I go there, it's crowded. Yes, but I have an appointment. Why didn't you serve me at the time that was committed? Yeah, we have a rush. Yeah, but that's why appointments exist, because you're organizing the rush. Then later on, you're like being seated there for 3-4 hours, and then you find out, okay, we have a missing spare part. We'll have to pre-order it. Guys, did I surprise you, by buying the car? You should be already, aware that you should have all the spare parts. Of course, the KPIs, again, are showing that the fill rate of the spare parts is 98%. So leadership are like,
We are doing a great job.
expecting, then maybe this guy actually asked for something that we should not be keeping in stock. But 98% means that you almost have everything in the car. And the car is like almost 6,000 pieces all assembled together. So 98% is impossible. So those figures, all of them are unbelievably inflated. It doesn't make sense. So those are the main, let's say, initial things that the customer are like. So they asked me for a booking. I showed up there. It's, so much crowded. I had to lose so much time, almost half day I lost just to hand over the car. And after that, they told me there's a spare part missing. Then they told me, okay, we can offer you a replacement in terms of, maybe if it's going to take more time, or you can just, it's okay. It's safe to drive. And it's also, very, very concerning for customers. When the dealership doesn't have the spare part, it is safe to drive back with the car. But when they have the spare part in the warehouse, but the customer is not willing to buy because it's so expensive, then it's a safety problem. And you have to make sure that you have to replace it the soonest. And this is the irony of it. The biased, responses from dealerships to customers drive the untrust that happens across time.
But Sharif, this also creates a burnout for the service teams. And I'm talking about technicians, engineers, service people, even admins, that really creates the burnout of those teams, and they actually chase them out.
True. Some of them actually being chased out of working hours because the individuals, they don't know anyone. They just got information that if you want this kind of after sales services, contact ABC. And ABC, they are not empowered enough to react and to make sure that they can fix the problem by different tools that they have. They have so much constraints in the process, and they are being, imposed with certain planning aspects that fired back in their faces. So the result is basically burned out teams. They leave the company and shift to another company, and eventually they find out that same planning is there. So they so that's the dilemma. So you would find like the average turnover for the after sales service people in any company in the market would not cross about 4 years in a company. They keep on shifting, bouncing from one company to another.
But then that leads, I can't help but ask that question. In the heart of the middle management, you have the service managers.
Yes.
That means that title in precise, they're actually firefighting, or are they actually leading?
There is a big responsibility on leadership in terms of investing in their people. Well, normally people would go for training when they start thinking about training, and developing the teams. They started, thinking about technical training. Then after that, it was developed to interpersonal skills, just soft skills and so on. But nobody actually realized that studying other types of sciences would actually improve the response of the teams, like marketing. Marketing is not a function. If you have the service teams understand service marketing, they will understand how they will react and respond to customers, what kind of messages are they delivering, and what kind of responses they have to record. And unfortunately, since you have all the people are like too technical and they're just following processes, they became machines.
Sharif, that I've seen in the journey, excellent people who actually tried in their journey to implement this marketing and service. And they were actually chased out of their jobs because of thinking out of the box and being asked to think out of the box. And when they did that, they were told, no, you're not doing it right. This is not how we should operate. No, just stick to your KPIs. And honestly, I was amazed by even they are limited to even posting on social media. And I cannot understand, where is the psychology in that? Where is the logic?
I don't really actually worry about those people, because normally the people who actually think out of the norm, they have two options. Either they end up with entrepreneurship success stories, or they end up in large corporate companies where they actually fish out such people who are having such kind of mindset. And that actually talent acquisition approach helps them to always grow and continuously improve. Because if you have someone, thinking out of the box, always trying to make sure that he's continuously improving and he has been flushed out of the system, for sure somebody will be actually fishing out such kind of people. You don't want robots. These people are actually who are following the process and just implementing as is. Those are the ones targeted by AI because this is a very repeated type of job. It is a very typical one. But the people who are thinking out of the box, innovating continuously and finding solutions out of the market norms, this is where you actually capitalize on them, you invest in them. And that's the reason why I'm saying it's the responsibility of the leadership, regardless of the service manager or a supervisor in the workshop or a spare parts manager or even the after sales manager. Try to check in the market how many of those who possess the competency of marketing. You will be shocked with the percentage.
Sharif, one question I have in mind. Now, in your journey, and I know you've worked in service leadership and consultancy and in car rental. And a lot of your former colleagues are now leading companies and leading teams. What was the main common focus they had in building those teams?
They had something in common, all of them. continuous improvement at the level of service or, the daily job, and investing in them in themselves. So they were rotating, and job rotation is a part of the continuous improvement, making sure that you're acquiring new skills and new roles and new responsibilities, new knowledge that gave them the opportunity to have almost different dimensions of the business that allowed them to later on to be on top of the organization. The other thing is making sure that they are developing their leadership skills so that they will be, competent enough to make sure that they can manage large-scale teams. So those are the majority of the people that are actually heading now large organizations possess, plus consistency. They were so consistent about, delivering the value that they were doing, regardless of the job role. They were always hitting the targets.
But then, as a leader, how did you always balance between the control and the trust of your teams?
Well, it takes some time. And frankly speaking, I will be just very, very, transparent about this. You don't build trust, in months. You build trust based on incidents, facts, situations where you test people, you invest in them, give them opportunities to grow, empower them, and that's where you can have the trust. You can empower somebody who you don't trust, but still, he will not be the number one selection when you are asking for, if you're going to manage in such a shared leadership, style, because we all know that CEOs, majority of them, they travel most of the time. Who's running the show? It's basically a shared leadership, style of the organization. So you might find one person or two person who have the interpersonal skills to lead the teams while he's away.
I need to ask you this. Now, I need you to put the hat of the consultant for a minute. When you walk into an after-sales facility in automotive, what are the three things when you go in, you will immediately spot and you would build at least 60 to 70% of your image of that?
Parking space, number one. Number two would be basically the technicians, how they react on the floor. And number three, the number of customers waiting for the cars.
Wow. Now, going to the automotive industry, how did you see the customer behavior changes in the last couple of years and in the next 5 years?
Well, since generation changes, across time, so the reaction has been also different. So we're not talking about different segments, we're also talking about different generations. You had this old generation which was very, very, I would say, basic in needs. If we're talking about the 1980s, someone who's looking for a workshop to repair the car, he would be in extreme happiness that the car has been fixed. That's the extreme happiness. Because in 1980s, it was too rare to find really good workshops who have the most, decent tooling level. Then after 20 years, things changed and tools have been available everywhere, workshops have been everywhere, and also generation has changed. So they started asking for prices, availability, service, facility, would like to have a nice, and cozy place to wait, TVs and screens, everything, it's more you're investing in a reception area. Then suddenly they realized after a while that nobody has time for this. So after all the dealerships were investing heavily in the receptions and how posh it looks like, and you have leather seats, you have, the espresso machines, and you have all of this kind of perks, and even family, type of stuff kids play area and so on. And suddenly they found that, the economy doesn't actually help people to spend so much time at workshops anymore. So we have spent all of this. So now the generation also changed. So later on, customers started looking for efficiency and time. And after the efficiency of time, the new generation is not looking for efficiency and time. They're looking for efficiency and time and technology They don't want to interact much with people. They want to make sure that they have, a peace of mind, and they want to make sure that everything is transparent and traceable, which currently is not there yet.
So showrooms and auto malls and the used car facilities are not as powerful as they used to be. Am I right or wrong? I mean, that's what I can tell from what you're saying as well.
Well, that's one of the things that I was, also trying to point out. Auto malls, showrooms, and so on, all those kind of whatever you want to call them. It's the way how you display products. It's a strategy. Okay, so your strategy is basically, I want to display and position myself as an auto mall that I have all type of, cars. And I would also have a multi-brand for workshops, so I'm flexible. That actually doesn't give an indicator to the customer as flexibility. It loses actually the main focus of your specialty, and you're losing it across time. And also, if you're talking about the teams cannot digest all the technicalities of all those brands under one roof. For sure you will be weak or fail in something. It's completely different from having a specialized facility that focuses on one brand, making sure that you give the optimum services. But since the market is fragmented and the strategy was basically growth, not retention, this what actually drove auto malls. Everybody wants growth, but retention, you would see actually that some of the dealerships, they did the other approach, which is instead of going horizontal integrations and going, auto malls, and because the auto malls are like, it's a form of horizontal integrations. But the dealerships who are really strong and they are still maintaining their market share and are still maintaining high retention rates, and I'm talking about the sales side, which is basically replacing the Toyota by a Toyota. Those are the ones who are basically managing the strategy in terms of vertical integration. They have companies that they take care of logistics, they have companies to take care of finance, they have companies to take care of aftermarket spare parts, and so on. So you're making sure that it's really hard to compete with you.
Sharif, that takes me to the next question now. We see a lot of movement around the service industry, and especially the platforms being introduced, which brings a very important question on board. The aggregators versus the existing networks of the dealerships. Should actually the dealerships be worried or adapt to the new systems?
That's actually, I would say that's the growing, it's not a trend. It's like entrepreneurs actually have successfully identified a gap within the whole market. And even though with fragmented, markets and price war and price sensitive markets, you can still find gaps. Entrepreneurs have seen a gap where customers, they don't really care about all those kind of spendings on facilities. They don't care about how much the dealership spends on PR, marketing, or whatever, and at the end he's the one who's paying all the costs. They only care about somebody who would deliver the service closer to him and digitally, and making sure that the price is reasonable and transparent and also easy to trace. And the aggregators are the ones who actually have delivered such kind of promise. They went in the market, they started developing their own applications. They have signed with thousands of workshops who can actually do the same job and deliver it at a quality price.
But Sharif, in reality, most of the dealerships are spending, and I mean millions, on tech. That means they are not utilizing that high-end technology to their full utilization. They're actually scratching the services.
I'll throw an example and challenge you back. If they are actually, and that actually brings us again to performance versus effectiveness. Yes, you're spending. Yes, you're doing that. But the initiative at the end is reflected at the customer side. When I go actually to a spare parts person and ask him for the oil filter of my, Toyota RAV4. Then he might respond, what is the part number? I don't know. It's not my business.
I don't care.
Don't you have my information? Don't you, have my history records? No, I don't have access to that. I'm a spare parts guy. Okay, yes, but you're the same company. No, we don't have such kind of information. Why? Security. Okay, why security? Then it's the data of a car and ownership. I'm not asking for anything else. So if I tell you that I want a spare part, I'm expecting that you know what kind of model did I buy. You just need to confirm with me, yes, I acknowledge, yes, this is the type of car that you have, correct? Are you still keeping it? Yes. Okay, so the spare part price is that much. But until now, technology didn't do anything. So the technology currently is being utilized. MPS, it's been used. How can I see the stock levels? How efficient can I order? How efficient can I order and manage the warehouses or the new car, stock warehouse? So the planning. So if you think about it, we are in the era of AI and we are still discussing operating systems for dealerships. Give me a break.
And that's where the battleground is between labor and parts, by the way. It's still there.
It's amazing where you can see the whole market is doing something and dealerships are doing something else. And the customer was originally there at your facility. And now when the customer left, you're scratching your head. You are saying, okay, I need to use AI to understand the customer behavior. Come on. The customer was already there. You're not an e-commerce business. You're not into e-commerce.
Sharif, when we talk about service levels, it has to take us to EVs because it is to do with the customer promise. What you promise the customer.
Okay.
I know why you're smiling. So
EVs.
Hold your horses. Hold your horses. There is a lot of noise around EVs. But what is the situation on the ground? I mean, are we actually ready or it's still in process? Or what do you think? I mean, there is a lot of noise around it there definitely.
Well, we have to differentiate between who's ready. Globally, no. Some countries, yes. Which means that if we take the facts, which is basically never discussed. When we talk about EVs, you have two types of discussions or two types of arguments. One of them would actually distract the individual to types of technologies of EVs. And the other one would be like, what are the reasons why you cannot buy an EV or would not decide to go for an EV? And both arguments actually don't cover the blind spot. And the blind spot is basically from the silent or the quiet customer. So the first argument and the second argument, you have actually the typical type of customers and the typical type of salesmen and marketeers, and everybody's in the room trying to convince each other, why is this actually a good choice? But the quiet customers actually have something else. They have questions that are never answered. So if we're talking about, EVs, how long it will take us to pick up the EVs? So any type of, individual, the first thing will be saying, okay, if I have my own car at the moment and I'm going to switch to EVs, what shall I do with my car? If everybody decided to get rid of the IC engines, so is it going to be recycled? Can I sell it to someone? Nobody will be interested. So everybody is deciding to go for EVs. So residual value will go zero. So that's the first challenge. Second challenge is the reality that is never spoken about EVs, the supply chain itself. So it's not about selling the car. It's about what is the impact on the EV until I receive the car. And people always claim that there is something wrong with their batteries. Even the people who own the EVs, brand new, they are like, the battery range is never the same as promised. And everybody's scratching his head, what's the reason? Well, let me tell you the hidden truth. Well, the battery in the steady state, while the car is parked, is normal like any other batteries. The car actually loses about 5% of the battery without even being used. So if it's parked for 10 days, you're losing almost like 50% of the battery. And the cars actually being shipped from the manufacturer to intermediate locations, it needs to be recharged. And in order to recharge in bulk, you cannot afford to have a big facility with, slow chargers. So you will go for fast charging. The fast charging also contributes to the battery fading. So by the time you are actually receiving the car, it has been multiplied in terms of how many times the fast charger has been used, how many times it has been parked, and now you're the first owner. Good luck. You already lost almost about 10-15% of battery range. And come on, man, it's unbelievable. That's the second thing. Third thing is, what is the total capacity worldwide to produce EVs for everyone? We're talking about a population of 8 billion. And take a portion of that, we all have cars. So the question here is, we have been manufacturing IC cars for almost 100 years, and you want us realistically to produce cars worth of 100 years of knowledge, speed, production capacity, plants to everyone within 5 years? It's impossible. It's going to take around 25 years, realistically, to make a full shift to EVs. Unless the hybrids, they give a push and support, because, the manufacturing of hybrids is much more realistic to be, on the radar, rather than the EVs. EVs will be there, but percentage-wise or market share-wise, let's not get too excited about it.
You've answered the $1 million question. Are we ready for the EV wave? Which 25?
25 years, no? You still need, in some countries you can push it 5-10 years. Depends on the infrastructure, depends on the investments, and but still, you will still need IC engines and you will still need hybrids, for sure.
Back to the automotive leadership.
Okay, again.
In today's automotive leaders, do you see most of them being proactive or reactive to the markets?
Some of them, yes, they for sure. They are very proactive. They always try to reshape the types of services, but they actually get stuck with the regulations. Sometimes they get stuck with the resources available. They get stuck with some cultural barriers. And sometimes they get actually stuck with their own judgments. Sometimes they are in dilemmas where they are not surrounded with the right people to get them out of that dilemma. And that happens to us, all of us. We're humans.
Now, when you, as a consultant,
Yes.
look at leaders of automotive dealerships, how do you spot, when you look at them, spot these criteria when they are visible? You say that leader is stuck somewhere in his leadership and needs to develop or needs to be proactive.
Well, when you start seeing him bouncing from one dealership to another within every 2 years, it doesn't mean that actually he is progressing. It means that he is capped. And he's trying to go horizontal, but he cannot go on a vertical scale. So, for example, you would find the leader that has changed, for example, in the last 10 years, 4 companies, 5 companies at the same level. So for sure he's stuck. But you would find also other leaders where they try 2-3 companies and one of them might shoot up and he would go to the next levels. It depends on the interpersonal skills and the amount of investment he gets to put himself and the amount of achievements he gets to lead the team to.
If I ask you to give one piece of advice to dealership leaders for the next 3 to 5 years, what would be the golden advice you would give?
Focus on technology and rotation of the people. It doesn't make sense that a person who worked in spare parts would, live the rest of his life as a parts director. That's the optimum career path for him. It's impossible. It doesn't happen in any other industries. Check the food and beverage. You might find somebody who's already on the shop floor at a plant or the facility or production line, and after 5-10 years, he is actually the CEO of the company. But that actually doesn't happen in the automotive. People are so capped, and the rotation doesn't happen. And speciality, it is so becoming a big myth, to digest. When I left the automotive company, I was in so much doubts. Will I survive outside in this market? Do I have the skills to do something different? But I'm a service guy. Would this be possible? Then I found the answer later on. It was like, no, it's just the people who are stuck. And when you get people capped, they will never innovate. It is so normal what we are seeing today. A salesman, he will be always a salesman. A marketeer, he will be always a marketeer. And your only way out is just to get on top of the organization to the CEO level. But nobody has the skill. And guess what? What's the reason? No rotation.
Sharif, at the end of today's episode, I have to say, what I've learned along is that after sales excellence is not about fixing and maintaining the cars. It's actually about building, maintaining, and fixing the trust itself.
That's absolutely true, because it's just the dilemma of the people, how to implement this. It's all about execution and being updated. Yes, it's all about, the full experience. It's the trust. If people don't trust, they don't actually they will not be able to be retained.
Sharif, at the end, I'd really like to thank you for for giving us the time today and sharing so much insights. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shadi. Thank you.